There you are. All righty. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the second fireside chat in our series of webinars. We're really excited to bring this series to everyone, these informal chats and informational to all of you to help through these challenging times that we're all experiencing. I'm Frank Niesemann, VP of Sales with E2B Tech and C2B Tech, and I'll be your host today. I'm really excited to welcome and have joined me James Wang, the Director of Sales and Partnerships for QStock, a great partner of ours. Extremely knowledgeable. You like to hear that, James, I know, knowledgeable about distribution and channels. And James will be helping us today to understand the supply chain, some of the things that we can do to help our businesses and yours navigate through these uncertain times, as well as come out on the other side stronger than ever. We hope that everyone enjoys the warmth of the fireplace behind us and enjoy a bit of comfort as we bring some information to help you through this pandemic. These are tough and challenging times for everyone. We know that. We're all confident that our desire to help each other, our national spirit, and the cooperation I see nationally and around the country today will get us all through. And that's the main thing. So welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to focus on how to manage a disrupted supply chain. So even in good times, the supply chain is crucial to our businesses and it's tough, but it's even more crucial at this point when everyone's maintaining their operations. Before we begin, I'm going to start with just a couple of quick poll questions. The first one, did you or do you have a continuity or contingency in place to manage a crisis like we are experiencing today? It'd be helpful if you gave us a quick answer. Thanks. Give you just another minute. Okay, thank you. And now, real quick, one more question. Just trying to get a gauge of who our audience is and what you may be doing. If you can answer this question, what industry are you a part of, or what category fits your business the best? Food and beverage, medical, healthcare and related, cannabis, other distribution, or just kind of general in terms of businesses? We'll give you another minute or two. Couple more seconds. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much. Gives us a good sense of, what kind of things people were ready for, what they weren't, as well as who's on the webinar today. So that's helpful. James, I wanted to start. I know you have a lot of good information to share, and one of the things we asked about was continuity and contingency plans. So, and I love this, when you and I were chatting, you called it the canaries in the coal mine. So I guess I'd reach out there and say, what were those canaries in the coal mine when we think about this time?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic, because I think there were bits and pieces of a lot of what was coming in the news and everything else, and people are starting to see the waves. So the question then comes down to, it's like, okay, well, even if you didn't catch as a company that, hey, something is going on, there's something in the wind here, that data could have provided you some of this early warning, where you could have potentially seen, for example, a notice of a jump in purchases that your customers are making, right? And I would kind of liken it to, if you're out hunting and you notice that there's a lot of deer coming your way, is it because you did something really smart, or is it because you should run to, right? How can you be able to set up things so that you can be able to really have a better understanding of what's going on. Because I don't know, I like to say when it comes to data, people joke that I'm a pretty big nerd when it comes to data. And I like my data like my bread. I like it fresh. I like it straight out of the oven, right? Like, and but what's interesting about data is data has no ideology. It's just there. It's pure. And the challenge with it is, one, being able to access it while it's fresh, because it's constantly getting out of date. How can you be able to get the most insights right there, right? And then that second half, the insight part of it, which is actually being able to have the right lenses to understand, hey, what am I looking at? So, like, for example, some things that we've seen customers do, they use this tool called the buyer's workbench, and you can actually see a historical 30, 60, 90, 100, all the way up to a year, right? And you can be able to see some fluctuations and trends. What's interesting is when you notice those types of spikes, it's asking those types of questions, right? Like, okay, well, great, there's a spike. Now why? Was it because of a marketing initiative? Is it a marketing trend? Is the trend good? Is it bad? In good times, this helps you keep a tighter rein on cash, right? But when you have this discipline plus tools combination, it gives people in times like this early indicators. Hey, what should I be paying attention to here? So you can figure out, okay, well, if there's a spike here, do we need to be able to anticipate and know this ahead of time before it's just we notice the inventory is getting really low when I reach my hand into the bin, and instead you're seeing the trend well ahead of time. Maybe you need to be able to resource, et cetera, like all of those types of things, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's boy, that's concise. I mean, I think everybody thought of it. I love the deer example. It's a great way to think about what's out there. So kind of following up on that, and I know
yeah.
there's a lot to the distribution and the supply chain, and we've worked with you guys a lot, and I know that comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
But for those that are in this situation or in those again, are saying never again. What would
Yeah.
you say they should be doing to make themselves more bulletproof for the future? I know there's a lot, and we're not going to be on here for 3 hours. I've seen the
Yeah.
process, but I think you have some good
Mm-hmm.
insight into what people can think about.
Yeah. Okay. Let me take a swipe at trying to be concise as possible here. I'd say I feel like it centers around kind of three major things that are themes that I most often see when you're watching people go through. There's kind of this buzzword now, this digital transformation, but there's something to it. The reality of it is there's a couple things that can really make you bulletproof, at least from in our opinion here, which would be, okay, first off, from an operations perspective in the warehouse, I would say number one, barcode, barcode, barcode. Like they're everywhere, and
Yeah,
it's been
yeah,
around for 70 years. But I'm shocked oftentimes at how underutilized it is, and I think it's because people get intimidated by them.
yeah.
But they're actually really very unintimidating, and they open up so much, right? Barcode your locations, barcode your items, barcode. Good systems will allow you to be able to print if you don't got barcodes, be able to teach it. If you do have a barcode, it's a game changer, right? It's incredibly important and fixes
Oh,
so many downstream problems. And that's, so number one, I would say, what's interesting is oftentimes we see that people have barcodes everywhere. They're just not leveraging them because it just the intimidation factor.
right.
But I'd like to come back to that later. But another thing I would say is creating a playbook for your operations. I feel like in interacting with people in this time, that's a lot of what we're hearing. So a question for companies right now is, hey, do you have a clear operations playbook? Because um, it's not always clear that the people that are normally doing the work are going to be doing the work. So how do you
Yeah,
receive? Does everybody know how to receive? How do you ship? How do you build? Is that really clear? I would say good systems should have clear workflows for you and how to be able to do that and make it easy and done. But still, there's still kind of like two sides to the equation, right? You want to be able to have a good system, and you want to also make sure that for your environment, you're also documenting alongside that. So, to put that concisely, do you have a clear documented playbook for yourself, for your operations, to be able to make sure that no matter what, no matter who, you're bulletproof and being able to keep the business going and the warehouse floor moving, right?
yeah. That's good
Mhm.
advice. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Okay, I had, so I'd say like the last one, I have a love-hate relationship with Excel. I kind of feel like
Don't we
I
all? Yeah,
jokingly, yeah, right. Like I would say that it fascinates me how many business opportunities have been birthed because of Excel, because people do these crazy things with Excel. So yes, there's a lot of wonderful things about Excel, but it's there's like kind of two sides of the problem. I maybe many of you feel this right now, but because of the environment, access can be an issue. So let's say you solve the access problem and you're actually using Office 365. Well, fantastic. You're one half of the way there, right? So, you've solved half of that central problem of just being able to access these spreadsheets. But, it's more than accessibility. It's also how do you take that raw information again and make insights out of it and know to take actions on it, right? So, um, again, I'm shocked. It's amazing the ingenuity and creativity of people when it comes to Excel, where I have seen people with some serious Excel kung fu. But you know, um, does that make you robust from the perspective of
yeah,
being able to make sure that anybody else can read that? Or I see people have to do really impressive things to have to protect different cells and stuff like that, make sure people can't touch certain parts of the spreadsheet. That you know are you leaning on that? Are you leaning on paper, or are you systematized, right? Like back to this whole digital transformation thing, that
yeah.
these three things together, being able to increase accuracy, being able to have that clear playbook, and be able to have the data out of spreadsheets and into the system as a whole.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's what I would say.
that's great. I mean, I know we're all Excel based, right? Everybody's into Excel, but you laid it out perfectly. Yeah, I like that. So you were talking about access, right? So that came up in there somewhere. We're talking about you're halfway
Yeah.
there, whatever's there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I know we have our opinions, and what I'll follow up a little bit too. But what are your thoughts about the cloud? I
Yeah.
mean, can that help? Today, tomorrow,
Oh
whenever.
man.
I know you only
Yeah.
have 5 minutes, so take it easy.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll try not to get too passionate about this, but yeah, I mean now it's really punctuated. I feel like, absolutely, right? It, it now more than ever. Well, let's just say on a basic level, right? Like society itself has suddenly seen the power and the absolute importance
Yeah.
of this new way of working. um, a lot of business was coming this way, but now it's going the opposite way around. 2 months ago, hey, Zoom was a business person's thing. Today,
Yeah.
people are teaching dance and karate classes. I mean, for goodness sakes, my kindergartner, it was really cute scene. My kindergartner,
Yeah.
he was on Zoom and everything, and he's like saying hi to all his friends, and like the teacher's trying to teach, and he's like trying to figure out how to mute everybody so she could actually teach because they're all saying hi to each other, and it's
Yeah.
amazing, right? Like how the cloud has actually pervaded very deeply in every part of society now, right? They're able to do it
Yeah.
together. So what was a nicety before in being able to make it so, in the business side of the world, some of that has started to trickle through. But I feel like this time that we're in has really punctuated the need for cloud, right? Because what happens when you have really important files, again, back to that whole thing, right? Like, hey, there are files that used to be easily, an arm's length away. You can be able to grab it from the file cabinet, or be able to grab it from a certain server. Hey, when that's not the case, what do? Right? Whereas, if you already are operating in a world where it's all cloud and it's all accessible, then you're already in a very different position, right? And that's kind of the power of it. Where and like people may take all kinds of steps, right? Where you may have many solutions now can be hosted. For us, I know, Frank, we've talked about how the best is a true SaaS
Yeah.
solution built on the cloud, right?
Yeah.
Where the value of it is the exchange of behavior is the vendor really owns the IT side of things to be able to take that burden off of people,
Yeah.
and to be able to make it so that it's really truly a service. Like, I mean, just like what we're doing right now, right? Like, you nor I have to worry about the care and feeding of the server
Right.
that Zoom lives on, right? Or Microsoft
Exactly.
Teams. It's amazing, right? All these schools that are now powered by classrooms running on Microsoft Teams, they're
Right.
not having to worry about the hardware or anything. It's just the service, right?
Right.
So same type of thing. If you have yourself already in good times operating in that type of fashion, I think absolutely, like the ability to have the team already on the cloud makes you so robust in this, because then nothing has changed. Operation is exactly the same. The only difference is now the location, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I like I promised, I'm not gonna get too
No,
passionate
that
about it, but yes, I feel like it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know in your world that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and I look at it, we're a Sage Intacct partner, right? So we're seeing a major
Hmm.
shift to the cloud from an ERP and accounting standpoint, and obviously all these other systems. Like here you are talking about distribution and the channel and all those types of things. And so as a follow up, I think I've seen it, right? So here we are stuck in the house. We're all working from home or somewhere else. So we need groceries, we need
Yeah.
supplies, we need other things. And yeah, we can go out to the store, we can do
Yep.
that. But I'm seeing, a trend of obviously shopping online, right? So I think some of that was going
Yep.
on before. People were moving more to
Yeah.
e-commerce in the sites. So a lot of the statistics are showing that move is going to happen now, but it's going to continue. And it was growing
Yeah.
already. It's going to continue after fact. So I'm curious, what your thoughts are around some of that in terms of how that'll affect the supply chain and how people are doing. I know you guys do a lot with e-commerce. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's an interesting trend, right? Again, there's so many shifts of just what the change in behavior from this pandemic has caused in overall infrastructure and systems and ways that people do things. So I'd say I group it very similarly. This is that same kicked into the pool type of situation, right? Where, back to the bulletproofing concept. It's how do you make yourself multi-channel diversified enough that when it's great, when it's good, it's really great. When it's bad, you got a leg to stand on, right? Like, because there are plenty of businesses right now where they're absolutely dependent on somebody walking in the door, or wholesale that's based off of somebody walking in the door and all that other stuff. But
Yeah.
how can you make yourself, again, back to this concept of bulletproof, right? So many of our customers, they've got stories kind of like this, where they came to us because they needed to optimize wholesale, yet they were starting to or wanting to or already in e-commerce as well. you know um, Something that's kind of interesting is just thinking about it. I know for me, it's just like what you were saying, like going out shopping right now, that's really, it's not
Yeah.
something people are doing right now. But what are we doing, right? Like, I like to joke that Amazon is basically the Google of shopping, right? So um, it's done kind of two things though, right? Like, it's like, because just by Amazon's own success, it has just driven the overall e-commerce market, period, where it becomes a reflexive behavior where you're like, oh man, I'm thinking about this. Okay, I'm going to grab my phone and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search for that. I might look on Amazon, I might look on something else. But once you've gotten used to that and the muscle memory is there, it's very much something that right now has gotten pushed even more into our societal consciousness, right? Where it's just like, hey, like, it would actually be much better for me to just order this and have this delivered instead of even worrying about it. So I would say, it's interesting. Like for us, we see customers leveraging kind of both, where they'll work with Amazon so they can use Amazon's Fulfill by Amazon service so that they can at least be listed on Amazon with their products. But then they'll have their own e-commerce site where it's a Shopify, WooCommerce,
Right.
you name it, right? Like any of those, Magento, Alphabet Soup, all the other like e-commerce ones, where it's really interesting, where people make their choices for different reasons, but that they know that they can at least be able to have a couple different ways that they can be able to have these sales channels flow. And
Yeah.
so, I have a feeling right now, for people, if it's feeling like, oh boy, like we should have gotten on it, well, the sun will come out, right? Like things will
It
change
is.
again. And I think it's back to that whole idea of, it's like, hey, you know, um, why not take an opportunity to learn from this, right? It's a different
Yep.
muscle for sure, right? If you're
Yep.
used to wholesale all the time, it may feel pretty different because you'll likely have orders that are smaller, some more expectations on it. But that's where, that's where it comes in of being able to follow a path that many others have followed, right? Where for the ones that did this, they were ready before the storm. And now, no matter what happens, their e-commerce channels and, the FBA stuff is just flowing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I think of that. I don't want to go
Yeah.
on
No,
too
no,
long
that's
about it.
No, that's valuable information. I mean, I think,
Mhm.
e-commerce is here and it's been there and it's going to
Yeah.
continue to grow. And we have the systems like you guys work with to have all that integrated into one
Hmm.
solution. And that's the key. Kind of shifting
Yep.
gears a little bit. I still have a couple of quick questions I want to get through with you, but shifting gears just a little
Sure.
bit. We talked about the effects of people and the workforce being remote and all the things that are changing because of this. And some had already been happening and it's
Hmm.
going to continue. What's the effect of that on as it applies to the supply chain in terms of how the workforce is changing? Just curious.
Oh man, that's a really interesting question. All right. Some of what we're hearing is I would say there's kind of like two major concepts I want to group around one overall problem, which is needing to have really efficient workforce because of a minimized workforce. So, for example, right, because of all the shelter in place and stay at home orders, even if you're essential, you may have normally 12 people on the floor and actually only 3 can show up. But there's a lot of different reasons that could be happening, right?
Right.
And so I'd kind of group these two problems into one is clear accessibility of information slash data and then team flexibility. So let me start with the first one, which is this pandemic is dramatically testing each company's processes and workflows. If you've always relied on spreadsheets and tribal knowledge, this is going to very much accentuate that bottleneck and risk, right? Even in good times, we like to joke that the holder of tribal knowledge should get to go on vacation once in a while. But right now,
Never does.
you know, yeah, right. Like let Ray go on vacation, please, right? Like that type of thing, right? Ray's a really smart guy, but how do you make sure that your business is robust, right? In tough times, it's even more critical that things move from oral history to
Yeah.
digital systems and workflows, right? Because you know the the value that people bring is beyond just knowing what lives in what bin and some of these other things. It's human ingenuity, right?
Hmm.
And like being able to have that information there should actually take away some of the mundane so that people can up level themselves, which then gets me to what I would say is the second area, which is important, which is team flexibility. Because of this pressure where, hey, really we can only have about 3 of us here, and it sounds very unpredictable right now. Talking to a lot of different companies, what's happening is it could be situations where the people that are on the warehouse floor trying to do the picking and trying to do the receiving, keeping things going, they may not actually be the ones that are normally accustomed to doing that because of all kinds of reasons, right? Because someone may be unfortunately staying at home for themselves or for a loved one, and now you've got all these people that are doing their best to help the company, but it's normally not their thing to receive. It's normally not their thing to pick. So, my last point was on the data, but this is more on the what and the where of like, what it is that needs to happen with the workflows, right? So, without good software to guide, oftentimes what's tricky is then you got the learning curve. Okay, man, like, like how do I do this? Where's this at? Where's Ray? I wish Ray could tell me what to do, right? It, being able to, again, back to this whole, like, I know it sounds so buzzy with digital transformation, but the concept at its core is genuinely sound, right? That if you've already moved your workflows into a clear digital process where something is guiding,
Hmm.
then like now you can be able to make it so that team members can be able to help each other out better, right? And that seems to be one of the biggest challenges right now, right? Where it's just like, hey, people are pinched, there's all kinds of stuff happening, and how do you really decrease the learning curve so that team members can be able to come in and help each other, especially because of the unpredictability of who is going to be doing that work. So, really it just comes down to, hey, like now oftentimes there's no choice, and there's the reality is there are consequences to it where the poor person that's not normally picking is trying to do their best, right? And they're looking around, and mistakes equal mispicks equals returns, right? So
Yeah.
so why not instead shift that, right? Like how do you, back to like the whole bulletproofing thing, right? Instead of it being in somebody's head, that it just be clear, right? So if you're following those steps, like, hey, actually no problem, Ashley, I know you're normally not the one picking, check it out. Here's the operations manual and some of this stuff. Actually, the interface for the stuff where you're walking around, this should be pretty easy. Scan, 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 right? Like it's so straightforward. Oh, cool. Okay, I go to A for grabbing this item, right? It should be really straight up like that so that you can be able to have that interchangeability, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I only think I'd add to that is in these times, if there is some time, this is a time to take a look at systems, right? You may not be as busy as you were, but you're going to be. I mean, it's coming back, and be ready for it. And automation is a big part of that. And I'll talk about data at the end. So just kind of as we wind down here, and this has been great. I mean, valuable information. The last thing I'd say, and we've talked about taxes. We have some upcoming taxes. Another tax webinar coming up later on another day. Are any thoughts around taxes or legislation you wanted to share? I think there's some things coming maybe that you wanted to share with people.
Yeah, it's early, but I noticed that HR 6049. It's the Medical Supply Chain Security Act. It's in its early stages, but what I liked about it was it gave a glimpse into some of what the government is thinking about, right? Where there are different people in government that are really realizing, hey, we kind of overextended ourselves here, and when the country needed it the most, the supply chain was so spread out that we put ourselves in a lurch. And so the spirit of that is to bring critical components of medical supply more stateside, right? Or
Wow.
very much closer to domestic. And so that's going to be interesting because I know for me, I've thought about that plenty. It's like, man, like what's happening with these ventilators and everything else,
Yeah.
that this is on the public conscious, right? Like where it's like, hey, how do we just be stronger, right? So that we can say never again, right? And so I think that's just going to change the overall landscape period when it comes to distribution, but very much so for medical supplies. So if you're a company that's in medical supply, that may be coming down the pike. So
that's great insight, and great heads up, right, for what's coming. It's good to know that somebody's out there watching it. Anyway, James, I want to thank you for sitting down with me or standing up or whatever we're doing in front of these cozy fireplaces today. Your insight was valuable. Obviously, you know the industry and you know what's going on with supply chain. It's great. We really appreciate your taking time. For everybody out there, we hope the information is helpful for you, and this is our goal, is to bring information to you during these times to help you through it. We look forward to you. On the screen, you should see the upcoming webinars. A couple have already occurred, but we have some new ones coming still. On Thursday, we have another one upcoming on Thursday. Not going to read them all from you for you, but there is a QR code there. If you want to scan it, you can get more information. Hopefully you can attend and join us, and we're going to keep bringing you the information. James, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
Same to you, my friend. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Thank you very much.